So we have Z-Build Brightwing as a solo support for Arthas, Sonya, which doesn't give them a lot of engage potential, and it doesn't give them... It gives them a lot of sustain potential, and not a lot of engage potential. That's okay on Cursed Hollow, just because the fights tend to be statically located because of the tributes. But they're up against, you know, Greymane Li Ming, which is going to be a problem until level 13 in all likelihood. But we'll see how the game goes. Some interesting decisions here. Do you see Arthas going in for the flank? We see Tychus Zagara in the bot lane, just waiting for someone to overextend. They don't have any CC, so this isn't going to like actually matter. But they start getting some damage on the tower, basically for free, and then eventually we're going to have Arthas rotate up to the top lane. There's a 3-man rotation here to stop him. He sees it. He's like, no, I'm not doing that. That's not me. I'm not about that. I'm not about that feeding life. Hiding in the little nook. For the record, if you're hiding in this little nook, they actually can't see you from the bush. They have to come out of the bush, in which case you can see them. We do see Anub'arak with his beetles doing beetle things, just chasing him down, preventing him from mounting. That delay of the Anub'arak, particularly with the delay of the beetle chasing Arthas so he couldn't mount, allowed Greymane and Rhaegar to clear the wave and get the full tower. That's the advantage of having a good tank who's zoning for you. And they're probably going to get the top wall as well, just based off of that, and they do. People ask me why zoning is important. Nice 3-man root, but it doesn't even matter. And again, the priority here should be to get the well. This is a 3-man lane now, so they do send Sonya up to deal with it. They see the Brightwing in mid, solo soaking versus Li Ming, but that's fine. Tychus Zagara countering in the bottom, getting the exact same amount of value, but they're actually getting the well as well, because Zagara pushes a little bit harder than Greymane does, because she has those summons, which allow her to absorb more tower shots and stay on the buildings for longer. Tychus doing Tychus things and actually getting the counter kill there. Oh, but Greymane goes in and gets the kill. Nicely done. If Brightwing had Z'd in a little bit sooner, or Tychus had used his Shrug It Off, or Running Gun, to get the resistance a little bit sooner, I think they actually would have won that fight without losing anyway. But good rotations by EE, allowing them to get that kill, even though it was just a trade, 1-for-1. Most relevant thing here is actually that the well is dead. The first tributes are guaranteed to spawn either here or here, which means that getting the well in the top or the bottom lane can win you the first tribute by default, right? All you have to do is wait until they get so chunked out, they have to back up the tap. Oh wait, they can't tap, you win the tribute. It's a pretty simple dynamic. So getting the well, if you're going to do this kind of push, is actually just is really important. You're basically just going for the 50-50 that you end up getting the well and then the tribute ends up getting in there. But it's hugely relevant that you just do that, and we didn't see them focus the well. They could have gotten the well. Greymane could have committed to this well once the wall was down and gotten it. He would have been chunked enough that he would have had to back off, but that would have been fine. We do see them, after they rotated down to get the kill, they're just starting to get camps. Sonya grabbed her team's camp as well. Brightwing in the lane. Then whenever you have Brightwing down here, Brightwing's leaving. She's like, this is not safe. Whenever you have Brightwing in a lane like this, you're really hoping the tribute spawns in the opposite lane. And this is really bad. So this is, in some sense, bad for Jabronis because they wanted Brightwing in the opposite lane, but in some sense it's really good for them because they have this well. I honestly don't see how they lose this tribute unless they intentionally give it up, and I think intentionally giving it up is actually a mistake. But instead they are going to go for the well, or go for the top. They're just going to push with this 3-man push. They have Zagara, Sonya, and Arthas here. They're just going to push. They give up the tribute for free. I don't like that decision. I really do think they could have rotated. They could have gotten there in time. And without the well available, they pretty much would have guaranteed the win on that tribute. They are going to get an entire wall for it. But they've set themselves up in a position where if they lose the next tribute, they're forced to commit to the third tribute, and the third tribute can be on an unfavorable side of the map. So they're trying to get an... I mean, and they tried to get an XP advantage by doing that, but they didn't even get an XP advantage. They have a little bit of a structure advantage, but the structure advantage they have is in essentially the wrong lane, because they really would have wanted the structure advantage to be in this lane because it's their boss lane. Bruiser's pushing mid. Bruiser's going to have This is a tribute that Jabronis absolutely needs to win. Like 100% they need to win this tribute. They're not in great position here. Arthas has no mobility, right? Thankfully they have Sonya who can kind of act as a frontliner, but Arthas has no mobility whatsoever. So by the fact that he's behind his team means he can't like get in on his team. He has to wait till his team forces him to back up before he can start fighting. And he's backing up here for some reason. He really just needs to be in there with Frozen Tempest pressuring. He's playing Arthas. He's playing Arthas like he's a bruiser, right? And Arthas makes a great bruiser, but in this composition, Arthas is the tank. So he actually needs to be the front line for his team. He's waiting for their flank, waiting for someone to overextend. That's just like a fundamental misplay of Arthas. They end up paying for it by getting 2 free deaths on their team. They get the tribute. They're even still chasing this Sonya. They end up getting Sonya in her own base, standing next to her own well, which is just harsh. That team fight went as badly as it did, 100% because of the way that Arthas positioned himself. Gonna get boss here. This is not 100% a safe decision, but you know they have the Nubrak zoning. It's not obvious that they're doing it. They have Rhaegar going and clearing the waves. It doesn't necessarily look like they're doing boss, although there's always the possibility that they could be, because whenever you have a Greymane, bosses are just easier to do. Greymane does so much damage to targets that just stand there and don't fight back like bosses, that you can always just burn them down. And they do, as soon as they see the boss cap, or as soon as they see them off the map, they rotate down, they're thinking about it. Arthas is zoning, which is the tank's job. Very good, but Anubrak's going to come in here and be disruptive from the other side. And at this point, they have to leave. They have to just let them have both bosses, because they're going to have, if they get a single kill here, they're going to have instantly level 10, and then they just win the fight. So now they have 2 bosses pushing. They can actually opt to push with this one. They're going to get Curse as well here. This is just a free Curse. Someone should be on top of this right now to make sure they can get it as soon as possible, because they want that Curse gotten instantly, so the boss will maintain its health total as much as possible. And this situation, level 10 Curse boss pushing at the 6-minute mark, guarantees a keep. There's absolutely no reason that this keep should be alive by the end of this Curse. So top boss has been cleared. Fort didn't manage to get saved. It ended up going down because the wall was already gone. And we have a pretty big wave here. We have a lot of damage coming in. We have, the gleaming, orbing the towers. They go down instantly. We do have Maw catching 2 people, which is going to temporarily force a disengage, but then they can just come right back in. Everything should be getting caught at this point. We do see Locust Swarm coming down for Anubrak. He's trying to keep in range of as many people as possible to get that zoning. He does get Ancestral, does manage to back out. Muradin with Avatar is going to be absolutely fine. And Laser on the boss. The boss, however, without getting shot by the towers, is going to be able to kill him. And I actually wish that EE had turned around for a second there and done a little bit more work on delaying, because they didn't get the keep. They did end up getting all of the forts, which is, one of the forts was mostly dead anyway, but they didn't get all of the forts. They really need to make sure they swing by and secure this keep, though. As soon as their heroics are up, I actually think it would be a good idea to just go in there and get it. They don't have a global, so they have to go in there as a team. They can't just send someone to snipe it.
Enough. The curse is over.
But, there's lack of vision on the bottom left side of the map, so they can just rotate through. Well, actually, there's Zagara creep. Actually, I prefer to see some creep tumors here and here right now, because just to deny that possibility or make it more dangerous. If they hadn't gotten hit by that Maw, they absolutely could have gotten that keep. If they had used their high health, because Anubrak had gotten Ancestraled, right? Anubrak was at full health. If Anubrak had turned around and used his Q to delay and aggressively mess with people to prevent them from mounting up, and then eat out once he started getting low again, the keep would be down. That was the margin we were at. They just needed a few more seconds of delaying the enemy team from backing. And they had the health and the cooldowns to make that happen. They didn't. But I mean, they're ahead. They just could be more ahead than they are. We do see Easy Harmony coming in, trying to get this lane pushed out a little bit, which forces a response from pretty much the entire team. And they see Sonya in the top lane clearing the wave, so they know they can go in on this. This is a 5v4. They're just clearing the wave. They want this pushed up as hard as possible, because they want this to start happening. We do see Nubrak spamming his abilities to get his beetles out, which again pushes the lane up. Opening up the side wall gives Li Ming options. This is a really important point. By killing this wall, their Li Ming player can stand over here and start poking from the side, which forces the enemy team to either stand here to absorb the shots, or the keep is going to get free damage. And they do end up getting the keep, and they're just going to get the wall as well. And just, that's all they really wanted. They just wanted the catapult to start spawning. They're up a talent here now, so they feel very confident, especially because they still see Sonya top lane. They're just going to invade these bruisers and get them as well. This will give them a double bruiser camp pushing in the mid lane. They can, if they force the fight here, as long as they see Sonya top, they can secure a wall. Each of the keep towers is as much experience as a fort. So if they can secure the entire wall and Sonya gets the top fort, that's a reasonable trade in terms of experience. Very good decision making. We do see Brightwing did stay bot. She's just constantly pushing out this lane. This is going to be a theme for the rest of the game, where Brightwing's just going to have to use her global push out lanes. It's worth noting that Brightwing did take Unstable Anomaly at 4. If you poly the mage minion and you have Unstable Anomaly, and then you Q the backline, that line will instantly die. Unstable Anomaly does add a little bit of damage in teamfights. And against certain heroes that are particularly vulnerable to ability damage like Illidan, it's very significant. But the primary reason you take Unstable Anomaly, and we usually only see it on very big maps, is for wave clear, because it allows Brightwing to so efficiently push out lanes and then instantly come to a fight. So you can either get your team really far ahead in experience or catch up in experience if your team's really far behind. Just worth noting that I'm really surprised to see Medusa Blades without Infest. I think a lot of people miss the fact that the value of Medusa Blades is it allows you to stack up your siege damage faster, which makes Infest better. If you're not going to go Infest, the Medusa Blades becomes questionable because spreading out damage in fights is not as good as doing more single target damage, and both the other talents at level 4 for Zagara, they're not great. Just straight up, they're not great talents, but they do add more single target damage in fights, which is relevant. EE getting a free tribute here just because they have complete map control at this point. There's just no possibility of the Jabronis being able to contest a tribute on that's not on their side of the map. That tribute that's on their side of the map, they might have gone for it, but as it is, it just wasn't going to happen. We do see TJ on Sonya here, or TJ Athanol on Sonya here, chasing down a Nurek a little bit, trying to contest this vision. Muradin is in the top lane, clearing Siege. This is a 5v4 scenario, which is why EE is being a little bit hesitant about going in, despite the fact it's on their side of the map. Muradin is now rotating down, and once they lost sight of Muradin, Jabronis started to back off. And they found the Muradin. Brightwing does come in case this fight actually happens, gives Sonya a shield, allows Sonya to go a little bit more ham, be a little bit more aggressive. Chasing in through a choke, realizes that's a bad idea, turns around. TJ Link did eat that the Li Ming combo. Avatar gets popped here essentially just for the disengage, because Muradin ended up getting isolated and chunked out by the Tychus. It ends up getting very low. Another 2-man Maw goes down, and Laser doing a lot of damage, doing a lot of zoning in that quarter. They're going to have to kill the Laser. The Laser does finally end up going down. Sonya tries to spin to win out, gets chased down by the Muradin. Sonya ends up being the first person to go down, and then immediately followed up by the Brightwing. And without the Brightwing, and without any mana, Tychus and Arthas both go down as well. Zagara manages to disengage because she had creep. Notice she threw the E out behind her to force the dismount if anyone was chasing her. They weren't. They were going immediately for boss. This is a little bit of a risk just because of the amount of health that they don't have and the amount of mana that they don't have. But it looks like they'll be able to get it. And boss in the uncontested lane is a pretty big deal. You see Sakara just poking, trying to hope for a kill here. Does actually end up getting everyone really, really low, but not quite enough to actually secure a kill. At this point, they just need to back and get their own boss and possibly the tribute. Hey, Joe. Sonya going up to mid. I like to point out that despite the fact that they're hugely behind in structures and they keep losing every single team fight, Jabronis is not that far behind in experience. You never want to fight down a talent tier, and it's possible to lose every single fight, lose every single objective, and never be more than 2 levels behind if your soak is really good. If you have a global, you can cut that to 1. So it's possible to never be more than 2 levels behind, even if you lose every single fight, as long as your soak is good. If you have a global, you can cut that down to 1 level. So Jabronis, in terms of soaking every single lane and being really crisp about the way they're doing experience and making sure they, try and stay ahead at every opportunity, they've kept their deficit to 1 level. They're down a keep, which is a huge disadvantage, but they're only down a level in terms of experience. Not even a level, if you count, the fact that they're catching up a little bit because their soak is better because they're not, trying to win they're trying to stay in the game as opposed to win the game. The reason that's worth noting is because you can't win a fight down a talent tier, or you shouldn't ever win a fight down a talent tier if the enemy team, teams are even. So by staying up in experience, they are gonna get to a point where they're gonna be able to take an even fight. And in a lot of cases, 1 even fight is all it takes to win the game, as long as you win that fight. It's huge development. A little bit of an error here. I won't say it's an error. If you don't cap, if the wall is alive or the fort's alive, and you don't cap the siege until the boss is actually here, the siege will help defend against the boss by DPSing the boss down. The reason they ended up capping it sooner was because they saw the invade happening, because they had the vision. As soon as they saw the invade happening, they were like, oh, well, we got to cap this, just make sure this doesn't get stolen. Which, again, not ideal, but it basically does deny the siege to the enemy team, which is a relevant factor. And we see Brightwing again in the bottom lane, just soaking. Soaking. Muradin, a little out of position, does hop the wall, ends up being in a fine place. Easy. Or Zarmany does get a little bit caught by Arthas and that Remorseless Winter talent, but again, Arthas has no mobility, so being caught by Arthas when he's outside of his base and away from his team. Another huge 2-man maul going on. They need to focus Zarmany here. They end up getting the kill there. That's absolutely critical. Tychus plus Arthas on a target is really good because Tychus can't really stutter step. Tychus' ability to stutter step is really bad because you can't input the commands fast enough to deal with the animation. If you're stutter stepping Tychus, it's 8 inputs per second because his attack speed's at 4, which is 4 attacks per second. Generally speaking, what players do when they're stutter stepping Tychus is they stutter him once a second and they accept the fact that they're going to lose 1 auto attack every time they do it. So he essentially gets 4 auto attacks and then 3 and then 4 and then 3 and then 4 and then 3 and then 4. But if you have an Arthas on top of someone, they can't disengage fast enough for you not to get the value if you're right up on top of the Arthas. So Tychus could just literally sit there, DPS Zarmany down, which is what we saw there. Instant kill on Zarmany. Brightwing does stay and clear the boss. We do see he was also going to push up the lane a little bit. And here, I think this is the fight. Maybe it's not. This is not the fight. I'm thinking of a different fight. So that kill on Zarmany resulted in a free kill. Zarmany did, by the way, win extended spikes. This is not a bad talent by any stretch of the imagination. But like 100% of the reason you take a Nibrak is because of Dampened Magic. And we're gonna see how that plays out in a little bit. It does something to give you poke, which matters on Cursed Hollow because of tributes, but you already have Li Ming. You already have the cocktail from Greymane. You don't really need more poke than just Li Ming, actually. Although Li Ming did not take Triumvirate, which is pretty standard on this map, just because it does give you that ability to constantly poke the tributes with the reduced CD. And again, I want to note, this is a 5-man Death Ball mid, while Brightwing soaks and Tychus soaks. Who on TJ side is Mage enough to need Dampened Magic? It doesn't matter. Anubrak has no survivability outside of Dampened Magic. It's literally his best survival talent by a huge margin. Sonya slams do a lot of ability damage. Most of Zagara's damage is tied up in her ability. Technically, Dampened Magic works against Tychus' trait because it's ability damage, and will continue to damage you even if the Tychus is blinded. And then Arthas is just... Also, Unstable Anomaly on Brightwing does a pretty significant amount of damage. And we also see Brightwing went Critterize. Critterize is a good burst talent. Dampened Magic denies burst, It's not just about mages. It's about ability damage. Tychus does ability damage, Sonya does ability damage, Arthas does ability damage, Zagara does ability damage, Brightwing does ability damage. That's 5 people who do a significant amount of ability damage and not taking damage magic. Is Underking the right choice without Epicenter? Yes. Underking's just a really, really good talent. Like, it's ridiculously strong. The other talents of that tier are very lackluster. The only reason to take Legion of Beetles is if you have a lot of skill shots to force. We've actually seen Legion of Beetles taken basically to counter Stitches in some cases, which is, pretty good. Because you constantly have these beetles spawning and they can randomly eat hooks for you. But there's no skill shots on the enemy team except for Ancient Spear. So Legion of Beetles is not going to get any sort of value in terms of blocking skill shots. Underking is strong just across the board because it increases your engage distance, it increases your escape distance, it increases the damage a little bit if you use it aggressively. And then his other option is the Cleave talent, which increases his wave clear. He could have gone for wave clear. He was pretty much zoning for his team all game, so he wouldn't have seen any use out of it. So here we're waiting for the next tribute. EE wants this tribute real bad. They get unlucky and it spawns pretty far away from them, but they're going to be able to get there in time. And here is a really critical thing. Most of EE has tap available. So you'll see them... Zarmany did not have tap available, and I'm pretty sure did not tap, and I'm pretty sure he had tap available. He could have pre-tapped. But we do see everyone else sort of turning around, doing the pre-tap. Notice Li Ming. Notice what Li Ming did there. She used her teleport, so her mana was low enough that she could tap. Because if you're full health and full mana, you can't actually tap. It won't let you. It won't let you waste it that way. So you need to be either out of health or out of mana. You can't really lose health if you're full health, but you can always lose mana by using the ability. So we see a Nubrak coming in, using his extended spikes, trying to get a stun, making sure he gets the delay. We do see Arthas aggressively positioned here, getting the vision, and this automatically puts the fight in Jabronis' favor, right? Because they have vision. They're spread out, they have the Bruiser zoning the Tribute, and zoning for both of their backline DPS. They have Arthas here as a threat for the, engage from the side. 20 seconds. Tap lasts 20 seconds until it finishes regenerating over full. So it's basically a 20-second heal over time plus mana over time. So if you can ever go to a fight that's going to be close and you can pre-tap right beforehand, you probably should. We do see Brightwing. And again, these catapults, despite the fact that they've been here all game, have never threatened core 100% because of this Brightwing. But Brightwing can instantly be in the fight. So we do see TJ Danton still mounted, by the way. It's important that he dodges these skill shots so he can stay mounted. We do see Muradin basically just going in hard, trying to get some damage on the Sonya. Is forced to jump out, sees the bright. So here's something that this fight's gonna have a lot of these too. It's gonna have a lot of this. As soon as the Brightwing Z's in on top of the Sonya, the Muradin jumps out. Why does the Muradin jump out? Because he knows he's not going to be able to DPS through the shield. He would rather switch targets. He would rather reevaluate the fight, reevaluate who to focus. He doesn't want to DPS through the shield if he doesn't have to. One of the best ways of dealing with Medivh is actually, as soon as Force of Will goes down on the target, you switch targets. You just stop DPSing the Force of Will target. Obviously, this is very hard to do in Hero League. It's very hard to do in uncoordinated environment, and it's very hard to do if players don't know any better. The number of people I've seen DPS a Force of Will target that has reabsorption on them is just like mind-blowing to me, because they're healing you. Effectively, like the damage they're doing, you realize that's healing your target, right? You're not actually hurting them, you're actually helping them. It's important to be able to stop attacking and to use your cooldowns very wisely. I wish I could slow this down more. That's all I'm going to say. So Muradin jumps out for the reevaluation. We do see... also, because he distracted the Sonya, the backline is now open, so Li Ming from her safe position here, and they started to get the vision back, so this is even safer. They don't necessarily know exactly where she is if she decides to back out of vision a little bit. They can start to get that damage on the backline. So we do see Zagara getting chunked there. Army of the Dead gets popped and adds a little bit of damage on top of the Muradin, we do see the Cleanse coming down to deny the root from Remorseless Winter, so Cleanse is now out of the picture. He gets rerouted by the follow-up root. This is the advantage of Remorseless Winter, is it gives Arthas his root for days. Grandpa Keta forces the... it feels like Ancestral has to be forced out. He does go down onto the Muradin. This means Muradin is comfortable re-engaging. So they burned a lot of cooldowns to get Muradin low on health. And Muradin was low on health, got Ancestral, and he's like, oh, well, they burned a lot of cooldowns. I'm at full health again. I have Healing Static. I have Battle Momentum. I have Thunderburn. If I just keep attacking, I should be fine. Also, he's using his Dwarf Frost aggressively because he did take a heavy impact at level 16. So he's trying to get a stun on the Brightwing so they can make Brightwing the focus target. It doesn't work because Laser actually comes down for the zone. So Laser is actually zoning the Li Ming's damage because Li Ming's damage is all skill shot based, right? I'm going to say Army is the right choice when Brightwing is a solo support. Because Brightwing can't heal a tank through the level of damage that this is. He just can't. I would say they're both situational, but I think that in the current meta, Army is more likely to be the one that gets picked more often because that's the situation you're going to pick Arthas into, where Army is good. In order for Cindergrosa to be good, your draft usually has to be pretty bad, or you should have picked Arthas on a map where he suffers from not having fixed point fights. So Maw in the backline, this only hits Greymane, but this is actually a really big deal. By hitting Greymane, you've basically taken a lot of pressure off of your entire team. Greymane is the hero who's going to follow up the Li Ming burst to secure the kill that's going to give Li Ming the reset. Just Li Ming or just Greymane in terms of damage isn't that scary. Both together is really scary. So by isolating the Greymane for a certain period of time, we're going to be in a situation where we can DPS safely. We don't have to worry about getting bursted out. We can position more aggressively until the Maw is over, at least. Also, the Maw, just by being a terrain obstacle, is even more zoning. So now we have Laser here, Maw here. This is creating two tiny little corridors, right? This is creating a tiny little corridor that Grandpa Keta is actually trapped in by the Arthas, and Muradin is or Mopsio and Muradin is also not in a good position. He does try and leave, get on top of the Sonya. Sonya does pop Nerves of Steel there, mitigating a lot of the damage, and Tychus's trait is about to come off cooldown. And here is the critical part of the fight. Anub'arak, actually rewind it a couple seconds. As the game freezes on me. So we're going to keep an eye on the Anub'arak. We already know what's going on with the Laser. We know what's going on with Arthas. We know what's going on with Army of the Dead. We've seen all that. We're just going to focus on the Anub'arak's decision-making here. So Zarmony goes in, backs off, shields, doesn't take any damage, backs off. He's pops Locust Swarm, not in the middle of anyone. Pops Locust Swarm, not in the middle of anyone. Continues not to have Locust Swarm healing him. He does get a little bit of value off the Sonya there. Sonya makes the right decision to disengage. Zarmony gets queued, is very, very low, and dies. So Zarmony died because he wasn't at full health. He wasn't at full health because he wasn't getting enough value to Locust Swarm. He popped it a little too early. Once you've popped heroics like Locust Swarm, you got to make sure you're adjacent to as many people as possible. He has that option in his kit with Shadow Exoskeleton, which he did take at level 7, to constantly stay adjacent to a lot of targets just by being in them and being disruptive. He doesn't have to be auto-attacking, he just has to be in there. He can focus entirely on using his abilities. If he happens to auto-attack, it's whatever. His auto-attack isn't really worth writing home about. But the reason he died was because he didn't take damage magic, which is critical, again, for Anub'arak's survivability. Anub'arak's health pool is pathetic. If you don't take damage magic, you're basically not a frontliner. Which is critical. But the real payoff here was the combination of Unstable Anomaly and Criterize. The way it works is that Unstable Anomaly will actually benefit from the damage boost from Criterize. So Unstable Anomaly does, a couple hundred damage, but it does 25% additional damage when you're Criterize. So we saw Sonya Q in, 1 slam, 1 Criterize, Unstable Anomaly, dead from 3/4 HP. Zarmony, with his timing, his decision of when to pop, his decision of when pop locus from his decision of when to zone for his team, his decision of when to use his abilities, his decision of when to use blood for blood, and his decision not to go damage magic, all contributed to him dying at the start of that team fight faster than he ever should have. It's not very often that we can look at one player and be like, this player made 3 decisions that resulted in his dying, and as a result, his team lost this fight. It's not very often we can say that. This is one of those very, very few occasions where one player making a couple bad decisions actually lost the team fight for his team. You could even make the argument that if they weren't planning on going Dampen Magic, drafting a new rack was a mistake. It could have been, I think it was a denial pick to deny a Nubrak from the enemy team so they couldn't have a Nubrak versus Li Ming, which is a very favorable matchup for a Nubrak, but they really needed to talent and play him a little bit better. So we do see Tychus' trait comes off cooldown. He is going to start chunking out Murden. He gets a little bit of a heal off of it. Murden drops below 40% health, and so he stops healing from that's the stuff, but it doesn't even matter. Because, Greymane dove in, went down, and then Murden couldn't get out because of the roots from Arthas. And notice that this fight, Arthas positioned himself as a tank. He didn't position himself as a bruiser. That is now Curse point for Jabronis. They have a lot of lane pressure here. They're going to push in with the Zag, get themselves further ahead in experience. I actually think they could have stayed here and finished off this fort. I think that would have been a really good decision. Instead, they just do a little bit of damage to it and leave. I think they easily could have finished that off. They opt to back. Brightwing already in the back here, DPSing this down. Also, just getting this fort would have, they would have had to kill the next wave too, which would have automatically taken pressure off their lanes. They do leave Brightwing, however, to de-push the lane. They're going to stand on top of boss and get it right as it spawns. This is their boss. There's no boss skill heroics or basic abilities on the other side of on the enemy team, so even if they were up as 5 in time, which they won't be. It is worth noting that Frigid Winds actually does apply to mercenaries, minions, and bosses. It's the only attack speed slow left in the game that does. Everything else, all the other attack speed slows stopped applying to minions a few patches ago, and it was actually labeled as a bug. And then Arthas got reworked, so I'm not sure if that's an intentional advantage for Arthas or not to make up for his low mobility. But they're going to take very, very little damage from this boss just because the attack speed is so slow. This will get them 20. Brightwing just staying down here and pushing with the boss would easily get them 20. Brightwing does actually end up rotating up. This is curse point for both teams, so both teams actually need to fight over this. I think that EE is making a very passive decision here. They're going to be like, okay, they're going to have 20 in time, we can't get it. Which I think is actually the right call, but it feels so bad to make that decision, especially knowing the boss will be up. And Jabronis realizing that they're making that call is making the absolute right decision here. They're not getting tribute. They're going to wait till they get boss and cap tribute and boss at the same time. The DPS and the boss down. They're going to get siege. This will push out the lane in addition to the catapult. So this bottom lane is still a threat. But realistically, it's not that big a threat. They actually need to have someone push down here just to get the experience. Mid lane is too pushed out for the experience. And top lane's here, but they know they're in top lane because that's where the curse is. It's in the Arthas guide. It's in the Arthas guide. And at this point, what's happening is they're threatening the back door. Right? EE is like... Jabronis is like, okay, we win this if we just push with boss. We're up a talent tier, we have a boss, we have curse, we should just win the game. So the only chance that EE has is backdooring. They're trying to threaten the back door by showing Arthas, or showing Murden on top of the creep. Right? And they get faked out for a second, they start hearthing back, and then they cancel the hearths. Frigid Winds applies to bosses, the attack speed slow. It's the only attack speed slow left in the game that actually applies to minions, mercenaries, and objectives. All the other ones don't, because they said it was a bug that they applied at all and fixed it in a patch a few patches ago. I don't know why Arthas applies. He did get reworked after that, so maybe they forgot. That's basically game. There's actually just no way for Jabronis to win at this point. EE 100%. Or no way for EE to win at this point. Jabronis 100% takes this game. They could literally have just like not fought and just let the boss finish core. We talk about damage in the game a lot. We talk about how high damage is in the game. And ever since the scaling changes, and ever since they started introducing more burst heroes like Li Ming, like Greymane, damage has just gotten higher and higher and higher. Their damage right now is the highest it's ever been in Heroes of the Storm. By like an enormous margin. As a melee frontliner, it's your job to be able to survive having damage done to you. That's just your job. You can either do that through superior positioning, through effective cooldown use, through really good talent choices, or through depending on your team to support you. Right. One of the reasons that Muradin's dominant tank build is Thunderburn Healing Static, and I think even after the patch changes that are coming up, it'll still be Thunderburn Healing Static, because it gives him so much survivability, and that's his job. Anubarak was essentially the bruiser in this composition, but that means he was a melee frontliner, right? He was supposed to be CCing the enemy team and doing that for as long as possible without dying. By not using his survivability cooldowns in a way that maximizes survivability, and by not talenting into a way that's going to allow him to deal with the insane late game damage that exists for the other team, he basically couldn't be a melee hero. He couldn't actually be in melee because he was too fragile. And there were a lot of small decisions that lost that fight, but the biggest reason they lost that fight was 100% because of Zarmini's talent choices and his positional choices, and when he popped his survivability cooldowns and then didn't get value out of them. So again, it's really unusual that one player's decision-making leads to a lost team fight. It's very unusual. Normally it's lots of little errors or lots of really good decisions by the other team. But in this case, it really mostly came down to one player making 3 bad decisions.